welcome to our first workshop in our three-part workshop about how to code for building a website. My name is Sean. I'm the manager here at the Digital Lounge, and I'll be the instructor for the next 3 weeks. We'll go through all of the setup today, so nothing that you needed to do before this, and we're going to start from the basics. I'm going to start like explaining how the internet works, just so that we're all on the same page. We're going to start from the basics and we'll go from there. We have 3 sessions. So today we're going to just do an intro. We're going to learn about HTML, which is the coding language that you're going to use to add any sort of content to a website. So this is text, images, video, any other media elements. This is the actual adding the content, kind of structuring it, what's going on top, next, bottom, etc. By default, HTML has some very not appealing styling, as we will see. It does not look great. So next week, we're going to learn CSS, which is the coding language to make that styling better. This is where we're going to change colors, we're going to change layout, change the font, all of that fun stuff. And then depending on kind of like how we progress over today and next week, will determine kind of what we do in this advanced styling one at the end. If, we still need a little bit more time, we'll go a little bit slower, learn still some really cool things, but not get too advanced. If we're like all crushing it, we all feel good, we're ready to do something quite difficult, we'll go there, but no pressure. So just a quick conversation about just how the internet works so that we understand kind of like how, when we code a website, how does it actually get to users? So there's a couple different types of devices. The first one is called a client device. So this is the device that you're using to access the internet. This could be your laptop, this could be a phone, this could be a desktop, so on and so forth. It's just the device that you're using to access the internet. You'll typically go to a browser, so like Google Chrome, Bing, Yahoo, and you enter in what's called a domain name. This is a user-friendly identifier for websites. Think like usc.edu. Our website is annenbergdl.org, google.com. Those are all domain names. The domain names, they point to this, which is called an IP address. And this is a series of just numbers and periods that is a more computer-friendly way to determine where something is living. So our client devices, like our laptops, our phones, they all have an IP address. Internet networks have one, printers have one, so on and so forth. And you point this domain name to the IP address so that when you type in usc.edu, the browser knows where to go to find that website. And that IP address that it's finding with that domain name is located on a server. And that server is just a special type of computer where you are hosting your website files. This is not something that you typically own. This is typically something that you kind of rent out from some other company like Bluehost or GoDaddy. You just get hosting through them, and then you can publish your code to there. You don't have to worry about maintaining this supercomputer that costs like a lot of money. So talking a little bit now about HTML. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. The hypertext part is just basically text that links to other text files. It's every web page is an HTML document. They can all link to each other, just basically that. Markup is just that, if you ever submitted an essay and a teacher wrote in like red pen, like different grammar stuff, that's markup. And the way that we write this HTML code is using this markup to tell a browser what we're trying to do, right? And we'll see this more. HTML is the standard language for creating a web page where you're kind of adding your content, you're defining the structure, and it's typically paired with these other languages called CSS and JavaScript. CSS is for styling, so your colors, your fonts, your layout, and JavaScript is going to be more for interactivity. This is like a true programming language that can get a little bit difficult, where this could be where you could set up like a light and dark theme button, where you click the button and it switches all of the colors on the site to a dark theme, click it, switches back to light. That's something that you do probably with JavaScript. HTML, we write it using these elements, and this is kind of a breakdown that I made to kind of describe all these different components of it. So you start off with your starting tag, and this is going to be your open caret and your close caret, and then anything you put in between here. The first thing is going to be what type of a tag this is. So this is a P tag, which stands for paragraph. This would be how you add like body text to stuff. We'll get experience with a lot of different ones. There'll be headings, there'll be images, videos. They'll all have a different thing right here. You can also include these things called attributes. These are just some additional kind of information about this tag. In this case, we're using a class, which is going to group some things together. We'll get practice with this. Don't worry if it doesn't make sense quite yet. But this could also be how you define for a link, where does the link go to? You're going to do that in an attribute. It's just more information about this piece of content. In between your starting and your ending tag is where you put the content. So here I have the letters DL. In this case, it's a paragraph. So my content of my actual paragraph text is going to be DL. And then most tags, you need to close it out. Tell the browser, hey, I'm done writing my body text. Some of them are what are called self-closing tags, which means that you don't need to have your end tag. And we'll see some of those a little bit later. So for this workshop series and any time that you want to code, you'll need what is called a text editor. There's usually one that's already installed on your device if you don't want to download something else. I think on Mac it's called TextEdit, and then on Windows it's like Notepad Plus or something like that. But those ones are pretty bare bones. They're not super helpful. They're also not super forgiving, where like if you make a mistake, there's no like auto completion, there's no spell check, there's no what is called syntax highlighting to highlight different parts of your code so that you know what each thing is. So we're going to use one that actually does all of that. And it's called Visual Studio Code. And you can go to this URL to find it. I also did write it on our whiteboard up here. So it's code.visualstudio.com, and it is an open source code editor. It's made by Microsoft, and you can just go through the process to download it for your system. And that's the one that I'm going to be using. If you want to use an alternative, there's also like Sublime Text. Adobe does still have Dreamweaver. Most people don't use Dreamweaver anymore, though. But if you want to follow along like one-to-one, I'd recommend using Visual Studio Code because that's what I'm going to use. But you can also use whatever you want. If you want to follow exactly along, yes, you do. So we're just downloading our text editor here, and I wrote that URL on the whiteboard as well. I'll give you like 1 or 2 minutes to do this. So if you just want to open up your browser and go to this URL, and you can just download. Additionally, I do have some starting files. If you would like to follow along with these, you just got to enter this URL into your browser. It's also on the whiteboard as well. And when you go there, you should see just a Google Drive folder that I shared. It's this .zip file. And you can just click the download button, or you can go file download as well. And you should see that in your downloads. Now, this is a .zip file, which is basically I took like a folder and then compressed it. If you want to open it up back to a folder, which you're going to need to do, you can just double click on it and it should open up like this. Let's open up Visual Studio Code that you've downloaded. And let me grab a new window. So when you open up Visual Studio Code, you'll probably see something that looks a little similar to this. And we're going to just start from here. This is like your home screen. This is like a dashboard, just kind of like whatever when you get started. There's a couple of different options over here for things, and we're going to actually start off with this one right here. So this is our extensions. And when you click on there, you'll get this little panel. And if you look up Live Server, there's this extension. It's just called Live Server by Ritwik Day. And we're going to use this one. This basically allows you to, as you're kind of coding in Visual Studio Code, you just click on a button to like launch it in a browser. And then as you make updates to your code and you save it, you'll see those changes in real time so that you can kind of see your changes and not have to like finish, save, go back, reopen, keep doing that. And you'll just click the install button for this one right here. So now I want to open up that folder that we downloaded. And so you'll go to File, and then there's Open Folder as an option. And when you click this, you will get your Finder window. And so just go to where you had your folder. So again, this is File, Open Folder, and then you go find it, and you just select it. You don't go double click, don't go in. You just select it and click Open. It'll give you this little thing because you are not the author of this folder, saying, do you trust this author? It is just me. I didn't intentionally put anything in there, but so I'm just going to say I'm going to trust this folder, and then yes, I trust the authors. And you'll see that in the left on our Explorer, we have that folder name up here, and then all those subfolders. And I can open these up and kind of see what files I have in all of my folders here, with little icons to kind of just reinforce what type of file they are. Now, to actually start coding, we need to add a HTML file to this folder. So how you do that is if you hover over, you can also click down in here, just outside of these folders. Up here, you'll see this icon, and this is just your new file. And when we click on that, you'll get the option to input what you want your file name to be. In this case, we want to name it index.html. Most of the time, you can name your files whatever you want them to be. But you should always have one index.html file because this is going to be your homepage. Anytime that Google Chrome or Bing or Yahoo goes to a website, the first thing they do is look for a file called index.html, and that's going to be the first thing that they show to the user. So it's always important to have one index.html. Don't have multiple. And then if I press enter, I will get my stuff right here in my code editor. Over here on the right, VS Code, like many other software applications, has added AI. This is a Microsoft Copilot agent. If you want help with your code, you can do that. I'm just going to close that out so I don't have to worry about that. And we start off with a very basic file. Okay, so we're going to start coding. But the very first thing I want to teach you about code is actually something that's not going to get shown in the browser at all. It's not going to show up. It's helpful for yourself if you're writing all of this code. Then let's say you get a little lazy, you spend months away from coding, and you come back to this project. These are like little notes to yourself about what each thing is doing. These is also really helpful if you're working with other people. So you can leave notes to say like, hey, this is what this section is doing so that they understand it maybe quicker than having to read through all these lines of code to understand it. We do this through what is called a comment. And every different coding language, programming language has a different syntax, which is just basically different ways to write the same thing. In HTML, how you write a comment is you do your open caret, which is going to be it's like this. You do an exclamation point, and then you do two hyphens. So dash, dash. Now, VS Code automatically will add the ending part, which is going to be two hyphens and your closing caret. If you're using something else like TextEdit or that Notepad Plus, those like free ones that come with the computer, it's not going to do that, and you have to type it in manually. And now anything that you add between here is going to be your comment. So I'm just going to add a space and just type in document type declaration because that's the next thing that we're going to do. Now, I'll try to remember to add comments throughout as we're working on it. Feel free to also just add some of your own if you want to add little notes about maybe something I mentioned, but they will not show up on a web page. There is a way that you can see it and see other websites and what they're doing, and I'll show you that a little bit later today, probably near the end. So I'm going to hit enter or return and get on a new line. And every HTML file has to have this thing called my document type declaration. This is just basically telling the browser what version of HTML that you're using. Similar to other technologies, it was created years and years and years ago, and there's been major updates since. And this is just making sure that they understand what version we're using. And to do that, you just do your open caret, another exclamation point, and then in all capitals, you type in doc type. So DOCTYPE. You do a space, bless you. And then in lowercase, you do HTML, and then you do your closing caret. This simple line of code just tells any browser that's trying to access this page that we are using the most up-to-date version of HTML, which is HTML5. If for any reason you want to use something that is older, you probably won't, just because there's no reason to. There's just, you would change this to be something else. I'll have you explore that. If you ever end up doing that, you probably never will. All right. Yes.
Does it just update to the
Yeah. So this is basically like HTML5 has been around for I want to say like a decade or so. Um, and there's usually not that big of changes anyways. So this would just say it's the most recent version, things like that. But there's not that much that changes between each one. Before we get too far, make sure that we're saving. VS Code doesn't automatically save. You can either do that by going up to File and Save, or get used to a keyboard shortcut. So that's Command S on Mac or Control S on Windows. Now I'm going to put an enter in, another return, so we're on a new line. We also have to put in a new tag that is just HTML. So we do open caret, lowercase HTML, closing caret. And you'll notice when I close it off that VS Code automatically adds my end tag. That's another reason to use something like this over TextEdit or Notepad+, is that you don't have to remember every closing tag. It just dynamically remembers if you need it or not. And now we're going to write all of our web page code in between these two. And this just basically helps the browser understand that things within this are HTML code, render it as such. If you are writing a website that has multiple languages, you can specify which language is for this web page in this HTML tag. So you would place your cursor between the L and the closing tag. You can add a space, and then we would use the language attribute. So it's just LANG equals, and then in between your quotations, you would just put the language code, which is for English, it's EN. I think Spanish is ES. French is FR. You just can look them up. But this just is basically saying, hey, all of this stuff in here is written in English. So now, in between these two tags is where we're going to write all of our website page content. You can, because browsers and any time it's reading code, it just reads from the top to the bottom and it doesn't care about any white space. It doesn't care about any sort of kind of like how you've actually structured your code. So you could write everything in this one line right here. It's going to look insane if you do, because it's going to keep going and going and going and going. So highly recommend that you place your cursor in between these two and hit enter. This is just going to make our code a lot easier to read for us. It's not going to change any of the functionality or the content. And in this code, you'll notice that it did not only just add these lines, but it indented in by a little bit. This just is also a helpful structure to understand that the code that we write in here is housed within this tag. Now we're going to create two sections in here that you need. The first one is called your head section. So we're going to do your open caret and type in HEAD and your closing caret. I'm going to place my cursor at the end of this line and hit enter. And then I'm going to do the same, but instead of head, I'm going to call it body. So this is what we have here. Now, the difference between these two, and I'll add a comment so that we know later. So I'm gonna go to the end of my HTML start tag and hit enter, do my open caret, exclamation, hyphen, hyphen. My head section is my metadata section. So this is more stuff that we place in here is going to be more stuff that is maybe helpful for the browser, but it's not actually going to show anything. There's two exceptions to this, that two things that would actually show up in some way, shape, or form. But this is mostly just stuff that doesn't show up anywhere. And then under right above my body section, I am going to add a comment here, and this is going to be my actual content. So everything in my head section is going to be my metadata, and everything in my body section is going to be my content. I'm going to Command S to save. So in the head section, so I'm going to place my cursor in here and hit enter. I want to configure this is one of those things that actually does show the name that is shown right here in our browser tab. And how we do that is we use our title tag. So you place your title tag within your head section, and whatever you write in between the start and the closing title tag is going to be what shows in that browser tab as the name. So I am just going to do HTML workshop hyphen spring 2026. You can name it whatever you want. If you want something more fun, go for it. And then I'm going to Command S to save again. Now, if you did that whole extensions, you did the live server, all of that stuff, you should see this Go Live button down here. If you click on that, it's going to run this live server, and it's going to open up your website in a browser tab for you to actually play around with and see. And you'll notice it gives me a little bit of an IP address to start, could create something. I can see the name of my file, and I can also see that title that I specified right here. So I'm going to just kind of place my browser on like the right side, and I'm going to place my code on the left side so that we can see both. I am quite zoomed in, so my like line spacing might be a little bit different, but this will help you be able to see everything. Let's go into actually adding some content so we just don't have this blank, boring page. So we're going to start off by going in between our body tags and hitting enter. And I'm going to add a comment, and I'm going to have this be text elements because we're going to explore how to add text first. So the first one that I want to show you, I'm going to go to the end of my comment and hit enter. And sometimes it adds a little extra space. I like to just try to keep things in line. We're going to first do that paragraph text that we saw in that example. So I'm going to do a open caret, the letter P, and then my closing caret. And now any content that I put in between here is going to be shown as paragraph text in my website. So I'm going to just type in at the Digital Lounge. You can type in whatever you want. And then when I save, it gets added to my website in the live server. So I just have my open, my text that I actually want to add, and then my closing. Now, most websites aren't just paragraph text, paragraph text, paragraph text. So we'll want to add some different headings to kind of break up our page. The first heading, which is the most important one, is going to be your page title. So I'm going to place my cursor at the very beginning of my paragraph. You can also do it at the very end of your comment because I'm just going to add a line in between the two. And to add your page title, it is H1. And I'm going to type in learning HTML. And when I hit save, you'll see that I get that on my web page here. You're probably already starting to see what I meant when I said HTML has some very boring default styles that don't look great. Next week is when we're going to actually make them look a lot better. Yes.
Just press enter after text elements to add
Mhm. Yep, you can go here and press enter, or you can go right in front of here and press enter as well.
oh,
Now, the note about our heading of our H1 is because this is our page title, every HTML page that you create, so every HTML file, should have at least one and only one. You shouldn't have multiple page titles on the same page. So for every HTML document, you're going to have exactly one H1 element, which is your page title. Now, there are different levels of headings underneath your H1. So I'm going to go to the very end of my paragraph here, And I'm gonna hit enter twice just to give myself a little bit of space. And again, these enters really don't change anything about the content and how it's going to be displayed. It just makes our code easier to read for us. The next level is going to be your H2, and this is going to be your kind of section headings. So I'm going to put about the digital lounge. Again, you can put whatever you want. And when I save, that gets added to my page over here. The thing with the headings is that there are headings 1 through 6. So again, 1 is your page title, 1 per page. For 2 through 6, you can have as many as you want on your website. 2 is going to be the one that you'll probably use the most. That's like your section title, your section heading. If you do want to break up, like maybe you're going to have like a really long section, if you do want to break it up a little bit more, you would use H3, which is going to be slightly lower. So maybe I'll say like history, and then I'll do like present day, etc. And you'll notice as I save, when these get added, my H1 is really big. It looks really important. It's my page title. My H2 looks a little less important. It's just my section. The H3s are even less, so on and so forth. And you can go all the way down to H6, which is going to be super small. You probably will never have to go down to an H6. I find that typically I just go down to 3. And then if I'm finding myself wanting to do an H4, I probably just rework my content because it's probably like you have so much content anyways, split it up into different groups. I am going to also show you something else about our text. So I am just going to look up a random paragraph generator just to have a ton of text that I don't have to worry about writing from scratch. So I just looked up random paragraph generator. I'm going to generate, let's say, 2 paragraphs, and this looks slightly Valentine's themed. There's red roses in a mailbox for someone. I'm just going to copy these and I'm just going to add it as a paragraph in here. And it's going to be a little funky with my stuff, but I have all of this text. You don't have to follow along with this if you don't want. But now when I save and I go back, I can see I have this huge block of text right in here. So if you ever want to split up this text, there's a couple of options that you do have. The first one would be you can split this up into multiple paragraph tags. So maybe instead of it being here all the way through here is my first paragraph. I can go and find where I want it to break, maybe like right here. I can close out that first paragraph and start my next one, and that'll break it up. So here it's going to say from this starting one, and then all of this text to this ending is my first paragraph. By default, it'll add a line break, and then it'll start my next one with this start tag and go all the way till it finds its associated end tag. So if you'll notice that there's just one line break here. If I wanted to add more space or do other things, you can't really do that easily with the paragraph tags. So the other tag that we're going to look at is going to be the line break. And so if you ever just want to add a line break, even if you don't want to separate it from other text in a paragraph, it's just the BR tag. The fun thing about this one is it's not a closing. You just can put open caret, BR, closing caret. And when I save, you'll notice that it gave me my line break right here. So even though all of this text in my code is just keeps on going like up here, I was able to add an enter in here. And if you want to add more, it just creates more enters. So if I just do like 2 more, it just adds more lines. And that's our BR tag. Yeah, so something that I like to do is you can simulate kind of what it would look like on different screen sizes just by resizing your browser. So right here, it's just like this is my whole laptop screen. This is what it looks like. I can kind of go down to here to kind of simulate. This is probably what like it would be on a phone. A tablet would maybe be more like this. You can kind of see what it looks like different. And at the end of today, I'll show you a more kind of fancy way to do it. So I'm going to go to the end of my current content. So after my H6, and I'm going to add a new comment, and we're going to talk about lists. So for lists, there are two different types of lists in HTML. The first one is called a unordered list, which will show up as bullet points. And then the other one is a numbered list, so it shows up as numbers. Typically, just best practice is if there's like related items, but you don't have to do them in a specific order, you're going to use an unordered list, so bullet points. Where if it's something that is like step-by-step instructions, like directions to someone's house, those are in an order. You'd use an ordered list for that. So let's create our two. I'm going to add an H2 heading to kind of have like a section title for my list with HTML topics to learn. And I'm going to go to the very end and hit enter for a new line. And then now to start my list, I have to add the actual list element. So for an unordered list, that's going to be UL. And I'm going to close it. And if we save, you'll notice I do get my heading here, but I don't get anything about my actual list. And that's just because we haven't added any list items to it yet. We've created like the list itself. We just haven't added to our list. And so I'm going to place my cursor in between the start and the end tag. I'm going to hit enter. And to add a list item, we use the li tag. And whatever you put in here will be added as a list item. So I'm going to add three. I'm going to do one called elements, one called attributes, and one called links. And if I save that, I'll see in my website, I do have my list and all of those elements that I added to it. Your list items do have to be within your start and your end tag for your list. Now, the other kind of flavor of lists, we'll do that, is very similar. So I'm just going to hit enter twice to have like a new kind of section. I'm going to call this web coding journey. Now to create a numbered list, so instead of it being bullet points, it's a very similar tag, but instead of U for unordered, we use O for ordered. So we do OL. And same thing like last time, we need to add our list elements. And so I'm adding one for HTML, one for CSS, and one for JavaScript. So to create our unordered list, we use UL. For an ordered list, we use OL. And then in between those, we use LI, which is our list items here. And then if it's an unordered list, it creates it with bullet points. And if it's an ordered list, it creates it with numbers. You may already be experiencing this as you're coding, that it's very specific with how you type things and how things are spelled. So for example, if let's say I mess up and I do something like this, where there's an OL start tag and an UL end tag, if I save this, you'll notice I get some really funky behavior here. It's basically thinking that everything from here down through here is still within my same list. So sometimes, if you're putting something on there and you're like, something weird is happening, it's usually just oh, I did the wrong character type of thing. We're going to move on to the next part. So at the very end of my ordered list, I'm going to do another two enters, and I'm going to add a comment, as we're now going to talk about link elements. And this is all still within my body tag section. So if you place it outside of the body, the browser might understand what you're trying to do, but it's not guaranteed. So just make sure if there's any content that you're trying to add that it's within your opening and closing body tags. Now, to add a link, we use what is called the anchor tag. So that is just with the letter A. So it's very similar to our P tag for paragraph text, but instead of a P, it's an A. And anchor just basically stands for the thing that you're clicking on to go to a link. And if I were to add some text in here, let's say I do like digital lounge website because maybe I want people to click on this and it takes it to our website. And I save this, you'll notice that the text does get added to my web page, but it's not clickable. It doesn't go anywhere. And that's because we haven't provided the link for it to go to. Yeah. How we do that is very similar to before, where we added this lang equals English to this HTML one. We're going to use an attribute inside of our tag. So to add an attribute, you just place your cursor after the actual like tag thing. So like A in this case, if it's going to be an image, it would be like IMG, which we'll do in a little bit, and before the closing caret, we're gonna hit space and we're gonna type in HREF. And this stands for hyperlink reference, which is just basically the link that we're going to provide for it to go somewhere. And whenever you use an attribute, you type in its name right here, and then you hit enter. Now, VS Code will automatically add these quotations for you. If you're using a text editor that doesn't, or you accidentally delete them, just make sure any value that you're providing to this attribute is within your quotations. And there's two different types of file paths that you can use in HTML. The first one, which is super, super simple, is called an absolute file path. This one, so if I were to just open a new tab and go to the Digital Lounge website, which is annenbergdl.org. If I click within my URL bar and I Command C to copy, and I go back to my code, between my quotations, I can Command V to paste. This is an absolute file path. It starts off with the HTTPS colon slash slash. And this is the exact location on a website that you want to use. Okay? So if I were to go back to my page, and I'm going to make sure to save it so that it updates, it gives me that blue color with that underline, meaning that it's a link. And now when I click on it, I get taken to the Digital Lounge website. We're gonna talk about also a different type of file path in a little bit. That's called a relative file path. And the difference between these is that an absolute file path is going to be the exact location on the internet that you're trying to go to. But sometimes you're coding with things and you have things that are associated over here in your project folder. So we have like videos and images and audio. We're going to link to these using what are called relative file paths because that is instead going to say, hey, look at our HTML file where it's located. And then based on what I'm putting in, go down this file structure. We're going to explain it. It gets a little confusing the first time. So when we start adding images and audio and video, we'll get a lot of practice with it. But for now, I'm going to turn that off. Now, another type of element that is somewhat related to your link, and so I'm going to add it beneath, is the button. So if I do open caret and then the word button, and then I am going to put in here, email the Digital Lounge and hit save. You'll notice that I get my button right here with the text that I put in between the opening and the closing caret. And again, it's HTML styling. It looks really old, but we'll play around with making this look better next week. Now, typically, if you want the button to do something, you're going to be using JavaScript, which is going to be that programming language. It's going to be a little bit more advanced and stuff like that. You can do things like you click a button and like an animation plays or something like that. We're not going to do that right now because that would be quite hard. But we're going to do something that's pretty simplistic. And if you ever want to make a different element a link, so in this case, this first one we made a link was just text. So it shows as a text, we click on it, it does something. So if there's ever any element that you want to make a link that's not just your typical text, you just have to place those A tags. So this one right here and that end one around the element that you're looking to do. So if I want to make my button a link where you click on it, so placing a link for our button, we would just put that starting A tag in front of our button. And VS Code will automatically add that end tag for the link. What you'll want to do is you'll want to take that. So I'm highlighting it all and I'm Command X to cut it out and Command V to place it at the end. And so if you want to make something that is not typical paragraph text, a link, you place a tag, then you place the, oh, I'm going to move it. And then you place the actual element. So in this case, it is our button, like so. And then you place the ending for your link tag at the end. And then now in here, I can do that same thing as before and provide that hyperlink reference. A kind of fun one to know is if you've probably experienced this, it's slightly annoying in my opinion, where you click on something that says email and it opens up your email like app on your laptop that I actually don't use, and so I always have to like go somewhere else. If you want to set something up like that, you just type mail to, and then you put a colon, and then you place the email address that you want to send the email. So in this case, I'm going to do annenbergdl@usc.edu. I'm going to save. And then now I'm just going to test it. If I go over to my website and I click email the digital lounge, you'll notice as I hover over it, I get my link in the bottom left of my page. And when I click on it, it's going to open up my mail app. If it's something that I'm using, it's going to send it to that email that I provided. Let's add something that's not just text. All of this so far has just been headings, paragraph text, these lists, links. Doesn't look like a great website so far. We'll probably want to add images and videos and audio. And so to do that, let's do like I've been doing before. And I'm going to create a new comment to kind of separate, and we're going to talk about media elements. So the most basic kind of introductory to media is going to be your image. So I'm going to put an H2 to create my section title, and I'm going to say images. And so then now I have my images down here. I'm going to start adding them. So I'm going to press enter at the end to create a new line. And to add an image, you do open caret and then IMG, which stands for image, and then you close it. And you will notice that it didn't add something after. And that is because image is one of those magic self-closing tags that you don't need to have slash IMG at the very end right here. Why they set it up where there's some that do, some that don't, I'm not quite sure. It's just some practice. So again, like where we saw with our lists and with our links, if I save this, my image doesn't get added. And that's because I haven't told it what image to actually use. So we do that with another attribute. So that's going to be in between the G and the closing caret. And where with our links, we were using href, that's our hyperlink reference that points to somewhere else. We want to do the opposite. We want to actually pull an image from a different location to place here. To do that, we use the source attribute. So that's src. And we're going to hit equals. And then now in here is where we provide the URL for where that image is. Now, the kind of fun situation is that we have our images in this same project folder as our HTML file. These images aren't on like a website already, where I can't like go find that image page, copy that link. So we're going to have to use what's called a relative path. And I'm going to open up my Explorer on the left here just because it makes a little bit more sense when you can see the file structure. You can also just open up your project folder in like Finder or File Explorer and it will make sense. Okay. So you can also just see it over here. So within my project folder, so my overall project folder is web coding series, spring 2026 HTML. I have 4 different things at the same level within my folder. So I have audio, which is a folder that contains other stuff, images, which is a folder that contains other stuff, videos, folder that contains a video, and then I have my index.html. If you have all of these closed like I do, where they're all like this, and you don't see your index.html file, you're probably going to want to move it. So relative file paths can get a little bit more complicated than the absolute ones because the absolute ones, it's an exact URL that you're providing, pretty easy to understand. With the relative ones, it's relative to where your index.html file is, which is why I was like, let's all make sure that it's in the same location. So you can start off with a forward slash here. And what this does is it tells the browser and is telling VS Code to start at the main project folder. So it's saying start at that first level of our web coding series. And so when I do my forward slash, I should see my file and these folders. So our forward slash is saying start at our main project folder. And then VS Code, another perk of using something like this versus TextEdit is that it'll give you some auto completion options. It can recognize that things are here. If yours isn't doing this, you just have to type in the name. So in this case, we're going to do images, and I'll type it out so that we can get practice, but feel free to click if you want. So we'll do images, which is the name of our folder. We'll do another forward slash to go within our image folder, and then we'll have my the two images that I provided here. And you have to make sure that you're typing things in exactly as they appear. This is a big issue that we see sometimes at the Digital Lounge is someone like image file will have .jpeg in all uppercase in their like actual file name. And then when they're coding, they put .jpeg in all lowercase and it doesn't match. Some browsers and some kind of servers understand that that's what's happening. Some are really strict and are like, nope, that's incorrect. So just make sure that whenever you're typing an image that you're either like clicking it to just autofill or you're typing it in exactly as you see it as the file name. And so now if I save, I will see my image here. And by default, it is going to show the image at its full size. And I provided us a really big image. And so you'll notice that it is really, really big. Now, typically I like to just change image sizes in the CSS, which is next week's topic, because I like to keep all of my style code put together so that it's all related. However, if you do want to kind of change it here, just so it's not this huge image, you can provide more attributes than just source. So if I go to the very end of my quotation and in between my closing caret, I can place another space and I can put a height. So HEIGHT equals, and then you'll provide a value. I'll talk a lot more about kind of units and values next week when we do styling, but we're just going to do a very simple pixel value. So we're going to do 600, which stands for 600 pixels. Every device screen is made up of a bunch of pixels, little really squares that showcase one color. And so in this case, I'm saying the height of my image should take up 600 pixels on this web page. You might be already thinking, is this going to be adaptable to like desktop, phone? The way that we're doing it is not, where it's going to show as 600 pixels tall on any device. So on my phone, it might be like the whole screen, where on here, it's not going to be as much. I'm gonna also add a width, which is the other dimension. Height is up and down. Width is gonna be your left and right. So I'm gonna just go over to between my quotation mark and my closing caret, and I'm gonna do the same thing, but with width instead of height. And this time I'm gonna do 900 px, so 900 pixels. And now when I save, you'll notice that my image is 600 by 900 right here. There's one last attribute that I'm going to show you on image. You've probably been on websites where an image just doesn't load and you get that kind of weird icon of like it's a frowny file. And additionally, there's some scenarios where someone might not be able to see this image. One of those cases is someone who has like low or no vision and is using a screen reader, which is basically a piece of technology that will read out allowed all of the content of a web page when they get to it. Those screen readers don't understand images. They can see an image is there, but they don't know that it's this Los Angeles sunset type of image. Additionally, search engines like Google or Bing or Yahoo don't understand what an image is. So they go through all of these web pages, kind of indexing all of them to determine when a user searches this, what are the results that are coming up? And it can't look through your images to understand what they are. So we can provide this sort of text that will be read aloud if a screen reader gets to this image, and then also helps those search engines better understand our web page content. And so hopefully maybe we're on page 1 of Google instead of page 20. And to do that, we add another attribute. So at the very end of my current start image tag, I'm going to do space, and that's going to be alt. So ALT equals, and then in here, I'm going to provide that text in between these quotations. So in this case, I might just say Los Angeles sunset with palm trees. That just describes what this image is about for those screen readers, for Google, so on and so forth. It is best practice to have alt text for any image that you're putting on your website, unless if it is an image that is purely decorational, that there's no meaning behind the image. Maybe it's something like the logo up here. They already know what page they're on. They don't need it to be read a logo or something like that. Then you probably don't have to provide one. But any like kind of image that you're placing in your content, you'll probably want to have an alt text in. And if I save, you'll notice that nothing changes about my image with that because we're not running into that scenario. We're not using a screen reader. We're not Google trying to figure out this web page. So let's now add a video. So I'm going to go to the very end and add another H2 and call it videos. And I'm going to enter to create right below. And the tag for a video is simply video. Super helpful. And we can close it. Now you'll notice that unlike image, video does have our end tag here. And the reason for this is that videos are a little bit more resource intensive than an image. And so it is more likely that a video is not going to work than an image. So in between our video start and closing tag, we can provide some sort of text that's going to display if that video doesn't load. So it's usually just something of like, this browser doesn't support video. This will almost never be seen. Most people are using browsers that use video, but it can be good practice just in case if someone's for some reason using a really outdated thing like Internet Explorer, if that's even still working. To provide the actual video, we do the same thing like we did with image. So we do our source equals and then our relative file path. So I'm going to go to the end of my video start tag and hit space and do src for source equals, and then inside these quotations, I'll do my forward slash. Videos is the name of my folder. Do another forward slash, and then I have a little Halloween TikTok video that Michaela out there made. So I'll just place that in, and I'm going to save. And you'll notice that the video does show up, right? We have the source, but there's no way to play it. It just looks like an image. So with videos, we actually have to tell the browser we want there to be some video controls on this video. So at the very end of my URL, so after my quotation marks, before my closing caret, I'm going to do space and type in the word controls. And then now if I save, I still get my video, but now I get this little control bar at the bottom that can really just help with playing, and you can pause, you can scrub through, can do all that stuff. And that's because I added controls to my video tag. It's best practice normally to keep the controls on. You can do an autoplay. So instead of controls, I can just put the word autoplay. What's going to happen is I don't get those controls and the video still just plays. You don't have to start it. You don't stop it also. You can't stop it. So that's kind of the trade-off of like, do you want a video constantly running with autoplay or with controls? Highly recommend if you do, or it will go through the video once and then it stops. If you want it to loop at the end, you can add the loop attribute. And then now if I do this, it'll play through my video. I actually haven't seen this TikTok. This is the first time seeing it. And then once it gets to the end, which is about now, it restarts. If you're going to do autoplay, and especially if you're going to do like no controls, I also recommend adding the keyword muted. Muted makes it so that the audio doesn't play. I think people get really annoyed when there's like an autoplay video that you can't do anything, it's just blaring music. So definitely if you're gonna do autoplay, do muted, um, like that. You can also, just like with our images where we provided a height and a width, you can do that with videos as well. If you wanted to provide that, it'll still keep the video like aspect ratio. So if I were to put, let's say, the same kind of height and width, so that's our height and our width, like so, it still kind of keeps that places in here. This is actually the same size as our image, but because this is a vertical video, it doesn't want to like stretch it and distort it, so you're just going to get this white space. So technically the video does extend out to here. So we're now going to do some stuff with our audio image or our audio files. And you'll notice that I provided two different files here, an MP3 file and a .wav file. Now, with a bunch of these different media types, so like images have like PNG, JPEG, different formats like that. Video has MP4. There might be some stuff with like QuickTime, like different file formats for each of these different elements. And I'm actually going to turn off the autoplay on this video so that it doesn't keep distracting me. Um, so each of these different media elements can have different file formats. Some browsers like certain file formats better than others. And some even don't support a file format as well. Typically, the kind of main file formats that you're probably going to do, the JPEG, the PNG, the MP3, the MP4, these all work across browsers. But if you want extra control over making sure that kind of no matter what, this file is still loaded, you can use different file formats in the same kind of video or audio player. So we're going to explore that with audio. So I'm going to do two enters at the end of my video, add my H2 to be audio so that I can kind of see that differentiation. And just like the video, the audio tag, super simple. It's just the word audio. So like so. Now, so far, we have been adding all of our source files using this SRC attribute. If you were to try to add two different SRC attributes in here, the browser might get a little confused. Might not exactly know which file to use, and it doesn't actually really solve the issue that we're doing. So what we're going to do is go in between our audio start tag and end tag, and I'm going to hit enter. And then now we're going to specify the source in our source tag. So source, you'll notice this is one of those closing tags as well that self-closes. And within our source tag, this is where we're going to specify our SRC. So SRC equals, and then we do the same kind of file path stuff that we've been playing around with. So /, we can select audio or type in audio, and then we can pick our file. We can start with our MP3 file. Now we're going to provide the other one as a separate source. This is like an alternative in case if for some reason someone can't use an MP3 file. So when we do that, we want to make sure that we're telling the browser what file format each of these sources are. It should be able to tell based on this file extension at the end. It should know that this is an MP3 file, but it's always best practice just to make it super explicit. So to do that, you add another attribute at the very end. So I'm between my quotation and my caret, and I'm going to do space type equals. And then I'm going to type in audio, which tells the browser this is an audio file, and then a forward slash, and then MPEG, which is our MP3. Now to add the other source, I'm going to go to the very end, but still within my audio tags, hit return or enter, do another source. So far, I've been like closing out my tags and then going back in to add attributes. But if you're already in here, you don't have to keep doing that. So I can just start typing like this. And we're going to add the other one. So our Halloween TikTok dot WAV, I'm going to add type. And it's the same thing, audio slash, but this time it's a WAV file. And then make sure it's closed out. So now what this code is kind of saying is, hey, we're going to add an audio player for these audio files. If the browser can handle an MP3 file, it's going to use that one. If it can't, it's going to go and try to use this WAV file. And if it can't do that, we specify that text again. So I'm going to place an enter after my second source and say your browser doesn't support audio, just like we did with video. And so I'll save, and you'll notice, again, it's not showing anything right here. And that is because with the audio, we do have to add our controls because the audio player is just a very simple thing like this. So I added the word controls to my audio start tag and then adds this audio player right down here. So I'm going to expand this text code a little bit so maybe it makes a little bit more sense about where things are being indented and these different lines. And you can also do the same stuff right here with your autoplay and your muted if you want it to automatically play, but also not have your audio playing while it's playing. You can also just do audio play or autoplay if you want it to actually kind of be out or stuff like that. So there is one last code thing that I want to show you, and then I'm going to show you a tool that's really helpful for debugging your own site, but also for maybe kind of seeing what someone else's site, what the code that makes it up is, so that you can maybe emulate something or kind of figure out how they did something. So let's start with the code thing. We're going to go to the very top of our page again, and we're going back to our metadata section, which is our head right here. As I mentioned, most things that you're going to put in here aren't going to be actually shown to the user, but there's those two ones that do. The first one is going to be your title, which is that text that shows in your tab right here. The second one is going to be this icon. So by default, you're going to get this kind of world gray icon, but you probably want to have something that's more in line with your brand, or if you make your own logo, you'll probably going to want to put it right here. So we do that within our head section. So I'm going to go to the end of my title and hit enter. And we are going to use the link tag. Now, as you can imagine, might be a little confusing. Before when we were adding this link over here to click on things, we were using the A tag, but there is a link tag. The difference between them is your A tag that we have down here is within your content and it's linking to somewhere else that you want the user to navigate to. This tag right here is more of like a connector between two different resources. So in this case, we want to link our HTML page to our icon in a special way to show this up here. We'll use this next week as well to link our CSS code to this so that the browser knows this isn't just base HTML. We have some actual code to style things as well. You can do all of that stuff up here. So in our link, which is one of those self-closing ones, you don't have to add the end tag. We start off by saying what the relationship is. So that's going to be REL. So this is basically saying what type of a link that this is. And in this case, it is our icon. Now, I'm going to go to the end and hit space. This one is a little bit weird because we're doing an image, which before we used image source to pull an image from somewhere else to show that right here. But because we're using a link to establish a connection, we actually have to point to an image. So in this case, instead of using source, we're going to use href. And we can do equals, and then in our quotations, we got a link to that image that we want to display in our browser tab. So in this case, that's within my images folder right here. So that's going to be forward slash. I can go to images, and then this DL logo small I have here. And if I save, it does show up here on Chrome. If it's on Safari, it gets a little bit funkier at times. So what you want to do if it's Safari that you're looking at, we are going to look at, you might have to add this type. So Chrome by default already has this for me. This image is already working here. But if it's not working, you might need to add type equals quotation image forward slash X hyphen icon end quotation. So I'm going to show you something that is pretty cool. And this is more in your browser. And each browser has their own version of this. I don't have much experience with the other ones besides the one in Google Chrome. So if you're using something else than Google Chrome right now, it's a different type of tool, but they probably have the same thing. But in Chrome, if you have any website opened, you can right click on it and click inspect. And what this does is it opens up this thing over here called Chrome Developer Tools. And this will show you the code that makes up the website. So we can see all of this HTML code that we just wrote. You will notice, as I mentioned, the comments don't get displayed to the end user, but if they know how to open it up in Chrome DevTools, they'll see your comments. So don't write anything insane in there, just best practice. What's nice about this is you can use this picker tool in the top left. When you activate that and you hover over, you will see kind of these inline code options that show up of like what's the code that makes up this element. And when you click on it, you get auto jump to in the code file over here. We're going to use this more next week because it has over here some of the CSS stuff, so we can kind of see what is the actual styles that are making up this element right here. If I were to go to something like the DigiLounge website, so this is not a site that I made in this code, and I click inspect, I can see all of the website code that makes up the DigiLounge website. This website was made in WordPress. So it's not even a coded website. This is showing me what WordPress is converting all of the changes you make in WordPress into code to do. And so it can be super helpful to see kind of different things here. It's also fully editable. So you can edit stuff in here, which is really kind of fun. So if I were to go to, let's say, this place where it says certification courses, and we can see this link. If I double click in here, I can enter my own text and just say, hello, and I'll see that change over here. So this is a great way to play around with stuff because this doesn't actually change the Digital Lounge website. If I hit refresh, it'll re-pull back from the stuff. I'm not actually messing around with other people's websites. It's just a fun way to play around with a site that's already made and changing some things around here. Hmm. Let's say like this card kind of thing right here. I can right click and find where this is here. I can find all of this code that makes up this card, which is a lot actually. And then over here, what's really nice is, with the HTML, it's a little boring for now, just because it's stuff like divs, which are just sections, like groupings. We'll do some more of that next week. Some links, the image. But over here, you can see all of these kind of code settings right here for CSS and the styling. So if, let's say, I really like this red, I can find the exact red color that something is from this. If I really like the font for this, I can go here and I can look at font family and see what font was put right here. Cool. Thanks, everyone.